Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 252 based on novel. So let's start. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's appearance appeared on the Life and Death book, and behind him was a taboo name, River Tomb, Jiang Bai Gui. So this is Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's name. Fu Yanqi held his hands and sucked in a cold breath. Suddenly, he sacrificed a little god blood with a trembling hand and wrote Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's name down. River Tomb, Jiang Bai Gui. Once he wrote the line of words, the god blood actually seeped into the Life and Death book, becoming more and more blurry until it finally disappeared. The Life and Death book can register death, and now that his name is registered, his soul and life are hooked. Fu Yanqi sneered and said, "The blood loss from my 4 fingers won't be for nothing." Qin Mu and the rest were all hurrying on their journey. Meanwhile, Lu Yinxiu and Kuei Qingpei watched them, their gazes following Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, as they quietly waited. Even after a long time passed, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked calmly. He assisted everyone in defending against the powerful waves trying to prevent their advance. Why hasn't his life and soul been hooked away? Fu Yanqi gritted his teeth and poured out more god blood. He was about to write down Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's name when Lu Yinxiu stopped him and shook his head. "Junior brother Fu, this person has remarkable abilities, and the spell of Mingju is no longer a secret to him. The more you test it on him, the more he will understand our Mingju spells. Now that he has the Life and Death book, you can't use the Life and Death book on him anymore." Fu Yanqi growled, "Has my blood flowed for nothing?" Kuei Qingpei frowned and said, "Under this world, the spells of our Mingju are the most mysterious, so how could he break them? Even if the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is the leader of Eternal Peace's reform, he shouldn't have such heaven-defying talent at such a young age." Lu Yinxiu said with a sigh, "Maybe this is the effect of the fake celestial heavens. All the past celestial heavens rose from that place, and it's natural that there's something special there. I've heard from all the different worlds, and only this ancestral land would have a saint appear once every 500 years. The other heavens don't have that kind of rumor. Maybe the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is the concentration of destiny." Fu Yanqi used his cultivation to seal his wound and stop the bleeding. He frowned and said, "I won't dismember myself and reincarnate, just because I had broken 4 fingers. Damn it. It's fine if he kills me, but to only sever 4 of my fingers. Let me go kill them. I will blow myself up and return to Yudu." Lu Yinxiu saw Qin Mu and the rest leaving into the distance. He said with a smile, "What are you worrying about? Just let them go. Our goal this time is to sacrifice Luofu Heaven and force the devil race into eternal peace. This will make them have no choice but to wage war. Once most of the gods and divine arts practitioners of eternal peace die, they will awaken the stone statues in eternal peace, which will destroy the world. Aren't we about to accomplish our goal?" Kuei Qingpei said, "My second goal is to record what we have learned from Eternal Peace's reform, and the result of Eternal Peace's reform is all on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Therefore, the fastest way is to seize Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor." Lu Yinxiu said, "The third goal is that Master wants to meet Son of Yudu." He said with a smile, "I feel these 3 matters can be executed and completed at the same time. Let them continue forward. When they reach Supreme Emperor Heaven, no matter how their divine arts can transform, they will always be within our control. Junior brother Fu, calm down, we just need to wait quietly." The 3 Mingju gods stood in the air and didn't give chase. Tens of thousands of people roasted until their skin was clinging to their bones. Even the beautiful Granny Sai had become emaciated. Just when everyone, including the gods, couldn't endure any longer, first ancestor human emperor's injuries finally stabilized. It was all thanks to Qin Mu and apothecary's exceptional care, allowing even his cultivation to recover slightly. First ancestor human emperor used his creation divine arts to create clean water for everyone, allowing them to get their lives back. First ancestor human emperor could finally walk by himself, no longer needing true god Qin Mu to carry him. When he looked at everyone drinking water, the prince of the previous dynasty was still slightly depressed. Seeing 7 kills star sovereign, his depression grew even worse. Wei Liao recognized him and said, "When I was taking up my position in the dynasty, I met your highness. When I was still alive, I met a person who claimed to be heavenly saint cult master from the lower bound, who seemed like a very gentle man, but he was actually very wild. From his words, I've heard of your highness' deed and know that your highness led all the races out from hell and found them a path of survival amidst the dangers." First ancestor human emperor said depressedly, "Founding emperor era has already been wiped out, there's no more highness. I'm just an army deserter, and founding emperor is one too. General is righteous, so don't mention the past anymore." Wei Liao was stunned and suddenly said with a smile, "Your highness, what do you feel about human emperor Qin leading these tens of thousands of divine arts practitioners to seek survival? How is the heroic undertaking?" First ancestor human emperor's depression vanished, and he turned to look at Qin Mu. "He is good, a good child. I've never seen a person who could be so positive in such a harsh situation. Furthermore, he still has great wisdom, great courage, and always pushes on in the face of adversity. There are many gods around him, but the one who could bring all of these gods out of this desperate strait is him and only him." Wei Liao said with a smile, "But the person he's learning from is you." First ancestor human emperor was stunned and shook his head. "Don't talk nonsense. I'm just an army deserter. The Battle of Jade Brightness Palace, I escaped. However, the situation you faced at that time was 100 times worse than the current situation." Wei Liao said, "Human Emperor Qin is leading everyone to step across Supreme Emperor Heaven to find a path of survival. Even though the condition of Supreme Emperor Heaven is harsh, it is far inferior to how Founding Emperor era ended. The person he's imitating is you, and it was you who led countless old, weak, ill and disabled in that terrifying era to cross mountains and seas of corpses. You avoided countless dangers and even fought to the death to find a path of survival for them, to find eternal peace." First ancestor was slightly stunned. Wei Liao continued to say, "If it weren't for you, there wouldn't be the eternal peace of today, there wouldn't be the reforms later, and there wouldn't be so many youths that shine with various talents. Your Highness, even the evilest person in eternal peace would hold respect for you and call you ancestor. Even the most influential person in eternal peace is also one of your people, and they honor you as human emperor. You only know yourself as an army deserter, but have you ever thought of your own merit? During these days, I've observed human Emperor Qin call you first ancestor. Even eternal peace imperial preceptor is respectful to you. You should know from that how highly respected you are in their hearts." The huge skeleton said with a smile, "They have treated you as their closest kin. Even human Emperor Qin, who is leading tens of thousands of divine arts practitioners to leave the Supreme Emperor Heaven, is learning from you. They have always been discussing the reform of eternal peace, but without you, where would there be eternal peace empire, or even eternal peace's reform? Your Highness, you have your roots in Founding Emperor era, but you are the one who started eternal peace era. You only notice the stain in your life, but have forgotten the saplings you have left behind. They have already grown into towering trees and lush green forest. Your Highness, look forward. Your stain is very small, and your merit is greater than heaven." Wei Liao said with a smile, "We, the old brothers that have died, are looking at you from above. The friends of Jade Brightness Palace are also looking at you from above. They wish you could walk out, and not continue sinking down like this. Tears suddenly streaked down first ancestor, human emperor's face. At the same time, a broken cliff appeared in front of them, and filling it was broken space. Qin Mu, an eternal peace imperial preceptor, looked ahead, and saw numerous broken pieces of space. The pieces clustered together, and were composed of rays of various color. Some shattered pieces of space were pure and flawless, like a blue sky which floated by silently. Other shattered pieces were like sapphire blue seas, while some were flames, lands, or mountains. However, the shattered space had no thickness. So, if one fell, they would likely feel nothing and simply get cut into pieces. Qin Mu looked around, finding the length of the broken cliff astonishing. They couldn't see the end with their eyesight, nor could they see what was on the other side. There were too many shattered pieces of space blocking their vision. The lava from the sea of lava had also broken off after flowing to the area, and they didn't know where the lava flowed. This should be the huge hole created when the great ruins fell from the celestial heavens. Qin Mu let the dragon Qilin stop the compass carriage and said, "If we were to head to the great ruins from here, I don't know the way. However, if we go from supreme brightness heaven to the great ruins, I still know the path. The crucial point is how we get into supreme brightness heaven from here." Granny Sai walked over and said with a soft voice. After replenishing her moisture, she has become incomparably beautiful again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a glance at her and hurriedly pulled back his gaze while thinking to himself, "I have already married. I can't have any other thoughts." Cripple ran along the broken cliff with incredible speed, and after a moment, he rushed back, causing a hot gust to blow in everyone's faces. He quickly said, "There's a bridge over there, one seemingly connected to the other side." The news surprised everyone. How could there be a bridge in such a place? They hurried to the location Cripple found, and there was indeed a bridge leading to the other side. Over a dozen jade green willow leaves weaved together to create the bridge. However, the willow branches were as thick as a dragon. There must have been someone who transformed the willow branches to be so immense and immeasurable. The willow branches crossed each other and reached the other shore. However, the willow branches on their side were rooted in the lava and absorbing nutrients. Qin Mu asked with a soft voice, "Provincial Governor Wei Liao, was this bridge constructed by you guys?" Wei Liao looked at the bridge, also in a daze. He shook his head and said, "I died early and didn't know about a bridge here." Qin Mu looked at True God Pang Yu, who shook his head. "We have been fighting the devils for 20,000 years, and there was never a bridge here. We don't even have the methods to use willow branches to make a bridge." The willow branch bridge could connect the two worlds, and what was truly strange was that this bridge avoided all of the shattered pieces of space. The bridge wasn't straight. Instead, it twisted and turned around the shattered pieces of space in front of the broken cliff, carving out a path for survival. Such profound algebra. Tao Master Lin Xian and the old Taoists of Tao sect were astonished as they looked at the bends in the bridge. One old Daoist was overwhelmed with astonishment, and he muttered, "Their attainment is truly profound. Only then could one easily avoid all of the messy, complicated and irregular pieces of shattered space. Who constructed this bridge? Who has such profound attainments in algebra?" First ancestor human emperor went forward to check and said, "This is from heavenly teacher, he has been here and calculated a path of survival. He then created this bridge with the willow branches. It should be supreme brightness heaven that's at the end of the bridge." Qin Mu said excitedly, "Sacred teacher is the teacher of our heavenly saint cult's founding master. If you want to learn algebra, you can come to our heavenly saint cult, or heavenly saint academy." Tao Master Lin Xian's face turned black, and he was speechless from resentment. Old monk Jing Ming, who was beside him, gave a slight smile and thought to himself, "Now you know cult master Qin is not easy, right? Tao Master Lin Xian pondered for a moment and said to the old Daoist beside him, after going back, should we discuss with the emperor to open a Tao sect academy? Qin Mu sent a person to scout the bridge first, and after a long while, the person returned from the other side and said, the path is safe, it's a dead and silent world on the other side. That is supreme brightness heaven. Qin Mu's spirit rallied, and he immediately ordered everyone to pass through the bridge in an orderly fashion. Provincial Governor Wei Liao, it's lucky to have your protection along the way. Will Provincial Governor follow us into the Great Ruins? Qin Mu said to Wei Liao, there's Fengju in the Great Ruins, and I had promised a position to you guys there in Fengju. It's time for me to fulfill my promise. Wei Liao turned back and saw Supreme Emperor Heaven in ruins. After a long time, he shook his head and shouted loudly, brothers who have died, follow me into Fengju. Village chief looked at the thousand of white skeleton gods, and he couldn't help sighing. Qin Mu was bewildered and asked, why is village chief sighing? I'm thinking about Daoist Ling Jing, who is still rowing the boat in Fengju. Village chief sighed. Now there's going to be another 1,000 gods in the Great Ruins. Daoist Ling Jing is probably not going to be able to buy a house if he rows the boat to earn money. The price of the properties is going to shoot up drastically. Qin Mu and the rest walked on the bridge made of willow branches, and as they walked forward, they saw the bridge twisting and turning hundreds of thousands of times. On the outside of the bridge were shattered pieces of space that were chaotic, with light shining from all directions. They were like mirrors without any thickness, and the shattered pieces of space revealed all kinds of strange sights. The shattered pieces of space were dangerous, and they had no regular pattern when floating around. Still, the bridge could find a safe path. Someone stood on the bridge and looked down only to see nothing but even more shattered pieces of space. Don't look around, every step must be stable. True God Pang Yu's voice rang out. If you fall, you will die without a burial place. It will be impossible to find your corpse. They walked for quite a while before they finally saw the end. Qin Mu stepped on solid land and looked around before breaking into a smile. It was indeed supreme brightness heaven. When he and Sakura Buddha got chased by southern heaven red deity Qi Xiaoyu, he had returned to the Great Ruins from there. Furthermore, when the Great Ruins fell from the celestial heavens and smashed through Supreme Emperor Heaven, the crack in space wasn't far from there. Everyone stepped on the land of supreme brightness heaven and looked around. They could only see the pitch-black land and violent wind that was ravaging the land. They could also see a ton of bones that were forming huge balls of white bone to roll with the wind. Clack, 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 clack. The sight of white bone balls rolling had become a unique scenery in supreme brightness heaven. When the wind stopped, the white bone balls scattered and collapsed onto the ground. Numerous skeletons started crawling up to find their own bones. Some even fought over a leg bone. Suddenly, the skeletons noticed them and turned to look at them. Everyone's heart tightened, and they were about to raise their guard when Qin Mu hurriedly said, "Don't be nervous, they just haven't seen humans before, so they are curious. They are actually very cute and pose no threat." A few courageous skeletons went forward and touched the clothes of the divine arts practitioners that were escaping, and some that were even braver pinched the cheek of a girl. Qin Mu took out several set-out clothes from his Dao Tai sack, and gifted them to a few of the skeletons. The skeletons wore the clothes and jumped in joy before taking off. The other skeletons were all very envious and started chasing after them. The earth here has no nutrients at all. Granny Sai tried to plant herbs in the earth, but the herbs quickly withered. She shook her head. God Sang Yi sniffed and said, "There's also no spirit energy in the air here. This place is not suitable for any life forms to live in, and maybe only skeletons can live here." "Supreme Emperor Heaven is falling," someone suddenly shouted. The hearts of Qin Mu and the rest trembled violently, and they hurriedly turned back to look at the path from which they came. They could see the shattered pieces of space that were moving irregularly and the occasional sparks coming from afar. Supreme Emperor Heaven was faint further in the distance. The reason being, Supreme Brightness Heaven was dim, and barely anything could be seen. However, Supreme Emperor Heaven was a sea of lava, which was extremely bright. Therefore they could see Supreme Emperor Heaven from Supreme Brightness Heaven. Supreme Emperor Heaven tilted to one side, and the angle of the slant was gradually increasing. Supreme Emperor Heaven looked like it was falling into the broken cliff. What's the place below the broken cliff? True God Pang Yu asked. Qin Mu said softly, Eternal Peace. No, it's the Great Ruins. Everyone was stunned. If Supreme Emperor Heaven smashed into the Great Ruins, it was likely to cause another disaster. Village Chief sighed. The people of Mingjiu are truly ruthless, and give no chances. Let us go quickly. We need to enter the Great Ruins before Supreme Emperor Heaven, or else we will die miserably. Follow me. Qin Mu shouted and led everyone towards the crack in space. Everyone followed, and on their way, numerous skeletons came running and stretching out their hands to ask for clothes. If anyone had spare clothes, they would gift it to them, and the skeletons that received the clothes would run around in delight. There was also a tall and sturdy skeleton that should have been a male before he died, but he was wearing female clothing. It was disconcerting to look at when he showed off. After the commotion, they came to the front of the crack and looked down. There were shattered pieces of space all around the abyss, and it was extremely dangerous. However, it was much safer than the road from Supreme Emperor Heaven to Supreme Brightness Heaven. The shattered pieces weren't as densely packed, and the sceneries of the Great Ruins were faint but visible. The previous time Qin Mu was there, he had used the God Execution mysterious knife to slash open the shattered pieces of space. Yet, when Qin Mu looked down, he saw that there was a safe passageway in the shattered space. Someone had used an axe to slice apart the shattered space, and left behind a passageway a mile long. The passageway had no shattered pieces of space around it. It should be by Saint Woodcutter. Qin Mu relaxed. Saint Woodcutter seemed to have reached there a step earlier to construct a bridge and open up a passageway. However, what made Qin Mu bewildered was that he had left instead of coming and finding them. With Saint Woodcutter's abilities, he can travel through the shattered pieces of space by himself. So why does he still have to calculate the chances of survival with effort, construct a bridge, and open up a passageway? Qin Mu was puzzled. Everyone rose into the sky and continued leaping down into the shattered space. When they passed through the space, one of the most majestic constructions in the Great Ruins lay before them. Southern Heavenly Gate. Founding Emperor Celestial Heaven's Southern Heavenly Gate. In the sky above Southern Heavenly Gate, tens of thousands of figures descended down from the sky and landed on the ground one after another. Qin Mu raised his head to look at the sky. The entrance to Supreme Brightness Heaven was nearly indiscernible. However, he could still faintly see a place that was emitting orange-colored light, and that was Supreme Emperor Heaven. Everyone, leave as soon as possible, don't stop here, go to the nearest city. Qin Mu stood on a high point and shouted, follow me. Everyone tried to follow him, and the orange in the sky gradually became clearer and clearer. It was Supreme Emperor Heaven that was slanting down and falling into the Great Ruins through the broken cliff. Even though Qin Mu couldn't see the situation of Supreme Emperor Heaven through the depths of the space, he could still imagine how terrifying and majestic that place must have been. It wasn't only Supreme Emperor Heaven falling. There was also Luofu Heaven stabbed in Li City of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The boiling lava and the two falling heavens would definitely penetrate the sky above the Great Ruins, smashing into it. They hurriedly flew towards the closest city in the Great Ruins and entered the city. Qin Mu saw a man with 3 faces, and his hair stood on ends. Fu Riluo. Behind him, true God Pang Yu shouted, and his murderous aura rushed into the sky. Swang! Sounds of sharp knives being unsheathed rang out, and tens of thousands of divine arts practitioner and gods took out their spirit weapons and divine weapons. They were blazing with fighting spirit, and looked nervously at Fu Riluo. The Great Ruins had numerous cities that connected the Great Ruins, Eternal Peace, and other important places in West Earth, yet countless devils had appeared in the city. There were even devil gods inside, and when the devil race practitioners saw them, they grew nervous and awakened their spirit weapons and devil god weapons, ready to fight at any moment. Qin Mu stretched his hands to take out a small case, and his hands moved quickly to unseal the coffin. There was a fierce glint in Qin Mu's eyes, and he sneered. Fu Riluo, you actually led the devil race here to hide here, but the Great Ruins are my Great Ruins, and I won't allow you to be savage here. Both parties were overflowing with fighting spirit. It was as though a war was about to erupt. Right at that moment, Saint Woodcutter walked out from behind Fu Riluo and said calmly, "Disciple, place the weapon down. I saved Fu Riluo and the devil race from Supreme Emperor Heaven. I have already made a deal, and Fu Riluo and his army will be submitting to Eternal Peace, and becoming one of the races under Eternal Peace's rule." What? The gods and divine arts practitioners of Supreme Emperor Heaven were full of anger. Their eyes were seething with fury, and God Sang Yi shouted, "The devils invaded our Supreme Emperor Heaven. How many sons and daughters of our Supreme Emperor Heaven have we lost? This grudge is as deep as the sea and shall see that we can never exist together. We, the divine arts practitioners of Supreme Emperor Heaven, will never resolve our grudge with the devil race." True God Pang Yu gritted his teeth. "Heavenly Teacher, even though you are Heavenly Teacher, not only did you not save your own people, you went to save the devils. I shall cut off all ties with you. I, as a soldier of Supreme Emperor Heaven, will never live under the same sky as a devil." Saint Woodcutter frowned slightly and said, "I'm thinking for the future. I know you guys can escape, after all, my two disciples are with you. Therefore I chose to save the devil race. Respectable King Fu Riluo has left the dark to submit to the light." Qin Mu also frowned. He understood Saint Woodcutter's idea, and knew that the idea was very good. However, he didn't account for the feelings of the people of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The human race of Supreme Emperor Heaven had been fighting the devil race for 20,000 years, and the hatred in their heart was impossible to resolve. Even if he was the heavenly teacher of founding Emperor era, he couldn't do anything about it. Saving the devil race was the greatest betrayal to Supreme Emperor Heaven. Boom! The sky of the Great Ruins suddenly shook violently, as an incomparably bright light shone down from the sky. Qin Mu raised his head, and saw Supreme Emperor Heaven falling. The city was in chaos, and people panicked. Cries rang out endlessly while Saint Woodcutter shouted, "Everyone, there's no need to panic. This is the celestial heavens of founding Emperor. Supreme Emperor Heaven won't cause any damage even if it lands here." Qin Mu, village chief and the rest were also doing all they could to reassure the people escaping. Supreme Emperor Heaven became larger and larger, brighter and brighter. Finally, the magnificent world of lava descended from the sky and crashed into the Great Ruins. In the Great Ruins, ancient god statues suddenly emitted light that rushed straight up into the sky. The ancient ruins also gave off pulses that would shake even gods. The divine light was like sunlight and rainbow, bursting out from every corner of the Great Ruins. The ruins gave off unimaginable power, and the one that was closest to them was Southern Heavenly Gate. The voices of countless gods were coming from the gate, and even though it was very soft, a power they couldn't understand was pouring out wave after wave. Supreme Emperor Heaven faced all kinds of apparitions from the Great Ruins, and its speed gradually slowed. Finally, the world of lava landed on the ground gently and slid down the southwest direction of the Great Ruins, finally getting stuck near the broken cliff at the source of the surging river. In the sky, another heaven appeared, and it was Luofu heaven, which stuck out from the center of Supreme Emperor heaven. The two heavens formed an irregular cross. It disturbed the magnetic field in the Great Ruins. Supreme Emperor heaven and Luofu heaven's magnetic field caught numerous humans and strange beasts, and they flailed their limbs as they fell to the other two worlds. At that moment, waves of light swept past and the messed-up magnetic field returned to normal. Numerous humans and strange beasts slowly floated back down. When the dazzling light swept through Supreme Emperor heaven and Luofu heaven, the two heavens could be seen cooling down rapidly at a speed the naked eye could see. The unbearable heat in the air of the Great Ruins instantly vanished. Saint Woodcutter said to everyone, "This is the celestial heavens. Supreme Emperor heaven and Luofu heaven's crash won't injure us. I've long expected this." No one from Supreme Emperor heaven paid any attention to him. Saint Woodcutter opened his mouth, but he didn't continue. He only stood there silently. First Ancestor Human Emperor came to his side and said calmly, "Heavenly Teacher, sometimes, something that's absolutely rational to you is something others can't understand." Saint Woodcutter had a complicated expression, which quickly returned to normal. He examined him and revealed a smile. "Prince Qin Mu, you have finally grown up. I'm very gratified to see you walk out of your shadow as an army deserter." First Ancestor Human Emperor still had some depressing traits and looked sickly, but he was full of essence, chi, and spirit. He was completely different from his former decrepit self. "How about Heavenly Teacher? Will a shadow be left behind since your clansmen don't understand you?" Saint Woodcutter said indifferently, "Even though your techniques has the word sacred and heart in it, you can never reach the height of my frame of mind. The opinions of others cannot affect me. The road from West Earth to Middle Earth has been crushed by Supreme Emperor Heaven. If the power of eternal peace can't reach West Earth, and West Earth would rebel. Thus we need to break through Supreme Emperor Heaven and construct a tunnel or teleportation formation." Qin Mu, Imperial Preceptor, Lin Xian and the rest of the experts proficient in algebra gathered together to calculate the influence Supreme Emperor Heaven had on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Everyone chattered loudly, and Qin Mu said, "It's easy to forge a teleportation formation, but maintaining the teleportation formation is an enormous expense. A huge amount of medicinal stones are required. The expenses needed to create a few tunnels will cost a lot in the beginning, but it will cost much less afterward." Tao Master Lin Xian said, "The strike of Supreme Emperor Heaven is from north to south, cutting off Middle Earth and West Earth. This will have a complicated effect on the original hydrology, circulation of the atmosphere, rainfall and snowfall. We need to recalculate the hydrology, atmosphere, and rainfall." Xu Xinghua said, "We need to calculate which places would be affected deeply, and if the climate of the desert would be formed. At this moment, we would need a Dragon King, and Eternal Peace would need a Dragon King to prevent deserts from appearing." Ling Yuxiu added, "We also need counts of the wind and masters of the rain to control the rainfall and wind." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor pondered for a moment and said, "Even though the abnormalities in the magnetic field of Supreme Emperor is now under control, Supreme Emperor Heaven and Luofu Heaven still have magnetic forces, so we need to study the effects they would have on the plants. When calculating the hydrology, atmosphere, and rainfall, we still need to add in the factor of the magnetic force from both worlds, monitoring the effect the magnetic force will have on earthquakes." Village Chief said, "In that case, we need Lords of the Soil, and the number we need isn't little. The Earth Travelers are living under eternal peace, and they were originally the remaining survivors of Lord of the Soil's race and listened to the orders of founding Emperor. Mua can visit them with First Ancestor." Wang Muren said, "The water vapor and fog are from the sea, so we also need God officials to manage the operation of the sea and mist. Only then could the rain and wind be brought to the land without a hitch." Other than the mist, they will also need to adjust the gales and waves to protect the fishing boats. The project is of a large scale, and we need people who are skilled in algebra to manage the empire's treasury. We need a god of wealth who is skilled in calculations. All the projects, the dispatch of the flying ships, we need a god of ships to dispatch. There are also giant Khuns on the sea, they are the Qin race, and we can invite them with human emperor. We just don't know who their current clan leader is. Crafts of heavenly works, to craft a treasure to suppress the destiny of Supreme Emperor Heaven and Luofu Heaven, to forge all kinds of divine treasures, to forge divine weapons for paving roads, we need a god of heavenly works. The plague and illnesses have to be controlled as well, so we need a king of medicine. To control the fire and related natural disaster, we need a god of fire. Everyone's discussions were muddled and diverse. After a lengthy discussion, they drew up plans of what they had to do after Supreme Emperor Heaven fell and gods of all positions were brought out. Because the dragon Chilean's attainments in algebra were extremely high, he was also involved in it, and he suddenly asked, "Cult Master, Imperial Preceptor, are we making another celestial heaven?" Qin Mu and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were dumbfounded. They hurriedly flipped through the god positions they had drawn up. Wasn't it the fledgling stage of the god positions in the celestial heavens? Weren't the god positions, they had drawn up the god positions that were important in the system of the celestial heavens? With those god positions, they would form the basic structure of the celestial heavens. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head. It's still too early to form a celestial heaven. Village Chief nodded his head and said, "Don't declare your kingship before the ramparts are built and provisions are full, we are just going to assign duties, and not establish any god position. This matter, no one shall leak it out, it's enough that we ourselves know." Everyone nodded their heads. However, they didn't realize that history was unfolding on a grand scale. With Emperor Yangfeng absent, the curtains of history were gradually opening from the discussion of theirs. Perhaps many years later, they would recall the day's sight and have much to be emotional about. It was just that they didn't know what would happen in the future. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, "The volume of calculations is huge, and with only us, it's difficult for us to calculate. Once we are done with the path to follow, I will report to the Emperor, and let the Emperor summon all the capable and aspiring people to do these deeds together." Suddenly, someone asked, "Then what about the gods and devils of Supreme Emperor Heaven and the devil race?" Everyone frowned, and they were out of ideas. Supreme Emperor Heaven and the devil race had a hatred that couldn't be resolved. True God Pang Yu and the rest had no qualms with cutting ties with Saint Woodcutter, and they even said words like, they would never exist under the same sky of with the devil. That showed their hatred was higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. Qin Mu pondered for a moment and said, "Let the people of Supreme Emperor Heaven live in the Great Ruins. The Great Ruins and Eternal Peace aren't under the same sky. Fu Riluo and the rest of the devil race can stay in the snowy plains in the north. The further from the Great Ruins the better. We can only do so." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded his head. There were too many things needed doing due to the collapse of Supreme Emperor Heaven. The volume of projects was so huge, and there were so many powerful divine weapons that had to be forged to quell the earthquakes, eliminate the volcanoes, guide the mist and calm down the wind and waves. Qin Mu had never touched those things before. "We still need Saint Woodcutter," Granny Sai said. "The only one who possesses so much knowledge in the world is him." Qin Mu agreed. He found Saint Woodcutter and first ancestor human emperor to tell them about everyone's idea. Saint Woodcutter said with a smile, "I've been waiting for this sentence. Now, I can meet Emperor Yangfeng." When they reached the capital city, Qin Mu took out a human emperor's seal and executed the power of human emperor's seal. All of the races in the world would sense the summon of the human emperor's seal. After a dozen days, Earth travelers, 5 Immortals Demon Race, Qin Race, Wing Race, Sea Tribe, Black Tortoise Race and the rest of the races hurried to Eternal Peace capital city. The capital city was extraordinarily bustling. This video will end here.